You step into your day with the familiar weight of what must be done pressing against your temples. The meetings to run, the obligations to meet, the conversations you already know will leave you drained. You reach for the map of tasks already penciled into your mind, pulling out schedules and shoulds, like burdensome tomes that smother the flame of possibility in your chest. And yet, between the lines of that map lies a vast expanse you have never charted. The unmade spaces of your life, those moments not yet scripted by obligation, those places where your own breath might guide your steps rather than the deadlines on your calendar. Today you will learn to breathe deeply into those unmade spaces, to feel their soft pulse beneath the clamor of must, and to let them shape your path toward new horizons you have not yet dared to imagine. You awaken before the day's urgent summons can reach you, the hush of pre-dawn settling around your room like a velvet cloak. You lie still for a moment, bones heavy and mind already churning with the day's demands. But then you pause, noticing the space between two heartbeats, the silent chasm that carries your own unspoken questions. You let that silence deepen, pressing your ear to its pale echo, until you sense the gentle rumble of possibility beneath your ribs. You whisper inside your mind, I honor this unmade space. In that vow, you let go of the premature rush into action, allowing your body and mind to soften into the hush. You rise without turning on the harsh glare of overhead lights, and you wander toward the window. The world outside is wrapped in half-light, the horizon a faint smear of gray, the faintest hint of amber just beyond the dark treetops. You press your palm against the cool glass, feeling the breath you haven't yet given to the world. You notice how the sky, not yet bright enough to reveal its palette, holds an indeterminate promise, neither day nor night, but the sacred place between. You sense in that indeterminate hush a mirror of your own inner threshold, not yet committed to action, not yet lingering in rest, but poised on the edge of becoming. You turn from the window and walk to the center of your living space. You stand, shoulders soft, and close your eyes. You feel the pulse of silence buzzing at your temples, the phantom hum of everything you will do, everything you will avoid, everything you will risk or refuse. Instead of letting those future threads tangle your every breath, you inhale deeply, drawing the hush around you like a gentle tide. You exhale slowly, releasing the need to grip your itinerary, the need to anticipate outcomes, the desire to force your life into shapes already known. In that exhale, you discover an empty vessel inside yourself, a hollow carved by the act of quiet waiting. You open your eyes and see the plain wooden floor beneath your feet, grain running in quiet patterns, each knot and line a testimony to seasons you did not witness. You step barefoot onto its surface, feeling the texture through the soles of your feet. The slight ridges, the occasional imperfection, the way it yields to your weight. You sense that this floor, like the unmade spaces within you, is waiting for your feet to trace new pathways across its stillness. You take another step and notice how with each footfall, you stir the hush beneath, sending faint ripples across the silent tension in the air. You whisper to the floor, show me where I might tread when I have no steps planned. You walk toward the corner of the room where a small, unadorned table stands, its surface bare except for a blank sheet of paper and a single pencil lying atop. You sense that this sheet is not an invitation to fill in predetermined patterns, but a field of possibility waiting for your breath to give it form. You step closer and hover your hand above the paper without touching it, feeling the pulse of emptiness beneath your fingers. You tell yourself, this sheet is free of other people's pressures. I may write nothing for a moment, or I may let an unexpected phrase blossom from the hush. You breathe in and rather than rushing to write your to-dos, you simply let your gaze rest on the blank whiteness, watching how your mind's restlessness begins to settle in its presence. You turn away from the table, leaving the pencil and paper untouched for now, and walk toward the door. Instead of stepping into the day's routines, You pause in the hallway, a narrow corridor where morning's light has yet to seep. You sense the hush pressing in from both ends. Behind you, the warmth of the safety you left. Ahead, the unknown expanse you have not yet named. You place a hand on the door handle and feel its cool steel, the faint pulse of its potential opening. You breathe in deeply and whisper, "I will honor the unmade spaces beyond this opening." You step out into the morning hush, an early hour when the world still holds its breath. You walk toward the edge of your street where the pavement shimmers in the half-light and the gutters hold a thin sheen of dew. You notice how no headlights carve lines across the darkness, how no voices echo from neighbors' doors. You stand, toes brushing the pavement's cool surface, and feel the moment stretch before you. Not the moment to dive into the day's plan, but a fragment of time you can call your own. You let your shoulders loosen and your heart fill with the simple awareness that, in this unmade space, you can choose to move or to remain. You lean into the hush with your senses, feeling the faint mist on your skin, hearing the distant song of a lone bird greeting the dawn, smelling the damp earth mingled with a hint of fresh coffee drifting from an open kitchen window. You realize that in this moment, you are neither rushing to achievement nor hiding from obligation. You are simply alive in your own becoming. You breathe and whisper, "I receive this as my life's first gift today." You decide to walk without destination, letting your feet trace a path through the hushed neighborhood. Each step is an inquiry. Where would I go if I did not yet owe the world my footsteps? You turn down a side street you seldom take and find yourself before a small, overgrown garden tucked between two townhouses. Its fence is old with peeling paint. A gate hangs ajar as though inviting a curious trespass. You step inside and feel the grass, wet with dew, yielding to your weight. You walk between overgrown beds where tall, spindly stalks rise like sentinels from the tangled undergrowth. You notice the pattern of weeds and wildflowers, some reaching to the sky, others crouched in shadow. You sense that the garden, too, is an unmade space, overgrown not with neglect, but with potential awaiting intention. You crouch beside a patch where violet blossoms have begun to bud in the darkness. You feel the curve of their petals closed against the cold dawn. You reach out and cup one bud in your palm, marveling at its precise geometry, the way it holds its petals with tinges of color yet to be revealed. You realize that this bud, too, dwells in an unmade space, filled with possibility, not yet asked to bloom under your command. You whisper to the bud, "I will let you open on your own time as I learn to open in mine." With a gentle touch, you guide the bud back to its place and stand, sensing how the garden's hush has become a mirror for your own unmade potential. You leave the garden via the gate you did not have to close, carrying the memory of that moment like a secret flame you tuck beneath your heart. You wander back toward the street and notice a small bookshop whose lights are just coming on, the sign above the door still darkened by dawn's lingering shadows. You push the door open quietly, stepping into the dim interior where shelves stand in rows like silent witnesses to unspoken stories. The air smells of old paper and ink, the hush heavy with untold narratives waiting to be read. You run your fingers along a row of spines, feeling the tiny differences in texture. Some smooth, some cracked, some still crisp from the press. Each book lies unopened, a container of someone's unmade spaces. Ideas, emotions, discoveries that have yet to find themselves in your life. You pull out a volume whose cover is worn with use, a collection of essays on improvisation and music. You breathe in the quiet hush of its words, feeling their invocation to step into the unknown, to trust the spontaneous hum of possibility rather than a composed melody of certainty. You open the book at a random page. In the space between the notes lies the power to disrupt and transform. You let your gaze rest on the phrase and you feel its resonance in your chest, a chord you did not know was waiting for you. You close the book gently, buy it with a spare bill from your pocket, and slip it into your bag as you step back into the crisp morning air. You continue your walk, heading toward a small cafe whose door is open and welcome. You order a black coffee, no sugar, no cream, letting the barista hand you the steaming cup that hisses like a summer of revelations. You move to a corner table by a window where the early light filters in, casting long shadows across the worn floorboards. You set your bag beside you and cradling the cup, you feel its warmth seep into your palms. The simplest permission to rest in a moment unmade by the day's demands. You take a slow sip and feel the coffee's bitter clarity coat your tongue, stirring open the hush you have carried since dawn. You think of the unmade spaces you have touched, that empty page on your table, the untended garden patch, the unopened books. You realize that each is a reflection of the other. Your life too holds blank pages, untended potential, stories you have not yet read. You press the cup's rim to your lips again and ask, how will I engage these spaces today? The question hovers without need of immediate answer, an echo of possibility that pulses beneath your ribs. You breathe and close your eyes briefly, listening to the cafe's quiet stir. The hiss of steam, the soft chatter of someone at a distant table, the gentle clack of a spoon stirring another cup. You notice how, in this unmade space, you can choose how to allocate your attention. Will you let your mind drift into the day's anxieties, or will you let it sink into the hush of right now? You choose the latter, letting your breath find its own rhythm. Inhale, exhale, drawing the coffee's warmth deeper into your being. You open your eyes and pull out your phone, feeling the familiar pull of notifications. Messages, emails, social media pings, each a demand for your gaze before you have even decided what matters to you. You hesitate, your finger hovering over the lock screen, and you feel the hush you have cultivated hold you steady. You say to yourself, I will not let the world's expectations fill my unmade spaces before I have had a chance to shape them. You swipe the phone off, tucking it back into your bag, and you let your gaze rest on the street outside. A snail inching across the sidewalk, a cyclist rounding the corner, a dog sniffing a lamppost. Each is a small testament to life unfolding in its own time. You lean back in your chair and let the morning's hush carry you toward an insight that intentionally dwelling in unmade spaces is not a luxury, but a necessity for those who refuse to live half-formed. From this revelation springs a second question. What do I wish to bring into form today? You take your notebook out and, but only because the cafe is still hushed, you open to a blank page and write at the top, I wish to form the shape of my own questions. You let the pen rest without forcing words to appear. You stare at the question until you feel its edges soften, until you realize that the day's shape need not be defined by tasks but by the quality of your inquiry. You close your notebook and rise from your seat, leaving the coffee unfinished as though it were a symbol of the moments you will reserve for your unmade spaces. You step out of the cafe and let the day's bustle rush past you without grabbing you like a vice. Instead, you slip into the middle of the busy street with the hush you have carried folded in your chest, letting it guard your thoughts. With each step, you feel the pulse of possibility, your questions the compass that points north where no map can yet exist. You reach a busy intersection, the lights changing like a dance of urgency demanding your speed. You feel the familiar impulse to move quickly, to hustle across before the traffic's roar swallows you. But you pause at the curb, closing your eyes and letting the horns blast and tires hiss recede into the periphery. You sense beneath that cacophony the steady hum of engines and the murmur of tires on asphalt, a shared rhythm that underwrites chaos with a hidden coherence. You breathe in that coherence and let it steady you. You open your eyes, and as the walk signal flickers to life, you step forward, not into a crossing defined by timing, but into an invitation to let the city's pulse guide you through uncertainty. You cross the street at a measured pace, feeling each foot place as a choice in an unmade space. Each step a decision to inhabit the world on your own terms rather than cede to its predetermined rhythms. You emerge onto the opposite sidewalk and head toward a small park you seldom visit. Its gate stands open, and you step inside the hush of early afternoon shade where a few benches line a winding path. You choose a bench tucked beneath a tall oak, its leaves forming a quilted canopy of shifting shadows above you. You settle onto the bench and let your senses unfurl. The subtle creak of branches overhead, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, the distant laughter of children chasing birds. You feel the hush of possibility stretch before you, an empty field not of grass but of intention, inviting you to place the first seeds of something new. You pull your notebook from your bag and open to a new page. You recall the question you allowed yourself in the cafe, "What do I wish to bring into form today?" You let the ink settle on the page and watch as words begin to hum beneath your pen. I wish to bring into form a day guided by inquiry rather than obligation. You write that phrase deliberately, each letter a small act of grounding in the unmade spaces. You look at the words and feel a flicker of relief. Relief that you can choose to let questions direct your actions rather than yield to the crushing weight of predetermined tasks. You close your notebook and rest your hand on your heart, feeling the gentle thrum of life beneath your fingertips. You whisper, "I carry the breath of possibility in my chest." You then stand and stretch, feeling your spine lengthen as though it, too, must remember the space between each vertebrae, the space that grants you movement and flexibility. You turn your gaze upward to the oak's branches and feel the silent support of its cathedral-high boughs. You know that, like you, this oak has roots anchored in the dark earth, and yet its leaves reach for the sky. You sense that your unmade spaces are like that crown of leaves, waiting to stretch into the light, anchored by a foundation you seldom notice. You step down from the bench and follow the winding path deeper into the park, letting your eyes roam across the meadow flanking the walkway. The grass stands at uneven heights, some blades cut short, others reaching skyward in a riot of green. You wander between them, noticing how each blade occupies its own space, each contributing to the collective hush of the field. You remember that you, too, are a collection of moments, some shaped, some wild, and that to carve meaning from your life, you need not press every blade into line. Instead, you need to tend to the question that guides your intentions, letting the field of your being take shape in its own time. You pause by a fountain at the park center, a small stone basin where water trickles in a gentle loop. You lean over it and watch the ripples as they spread outward from where a single droplet fell. You notice how the ripples cross one another, each circle an echo of the next, until they dissipate at the basin's edge. You whisper, "I am the ripples and the basin is my life." You close your eyes and press a fingertip against the water's surface, the cool touch a reminder that in the unmade spaces of your mind, even the smallest action can send waves outward. You withdraw your finger and feel the subtle hum of possibility in your fingertips, a quiet invitation to let your gestures shape the calm rather than scorch it with urgency. You step away from the fountain and head toward a side path you have never taken, curious to see where it leads. As you walk, you notice patches of wildflowers sprouting along the edges, small clusters of yellow daisies that open their petals to the sun, purple clover blossoms that drift their sweet scent on the breeze, solitary white lilies standing sentinel near the path's boundary. Each flower blooms on its own timetable, each finds the precise moment to unfurl into color. You sense in them the lesson that you too need not rush your own blossoming. You can let each phase of your life unfold in its own season, guided by the pulse of your unmade spaces rather than by the insistent drumbeat of external demands. Your path curves to reveal a small wooden bench carved with initials that have long since faded. You sit and notice a pair of empty glasses perched on its arm, a relic of two souls who once sat here, sharing secrets no doubt illuminated by the hush of dusk. You imagine your own past selves who occupied this bench, the anxious teenager who feared every judgment, the earnest young adult who believed vulnerability would break them, the tired professional who thought success meant silencing every unmade edge. You sit and let the weight of all those selves gather at your feet, a tapestry of what you once were. You breathe and whisper, "I acknowledge you all, and I let your fragments guide me rather than bind me." You rise from the bench and continue along the path until you find yourself at a clearing bordered by low stone walls, ruins of a structure whose purpose has been lost to time. You step through the gap between two stones and find the heart of the ruin, a circular ring of floor where nothing grows, nothing clings, only earth and a thin veil of moss. The open sky above frames the ruin's perimeter in a halo of light, and you feel as though you have stepped into some ancient chamber of unmade possibility. You run your hand along a weathered stone and discover a faint carving, like the faint memory of a script long erased. You lean closer, feeling the stone's cool surface, and you whisper, "I belong to this space between beginnings and endings." You sit at the center of the ring and close your eyes, feeling the hush intensify in every direction, as though the world has edged away to let you exist without interruption. You breathe in the hush, letting it fill your lungs until you feel your chest rise like a sail catching a gentle wind. You exhale and feel the tension you've carried shift, no longer tethered to outcomes, not yet committed to action, simply breathing in the unmade space you have claimed for yourself. You whisper, "I am here, neither lost nor found, but forming." You rise and begin to walk in a slow circle around the ring's edge, each footfall echoing on ancient stones. As you complete each circuit, you feel the map of your own life expanding into the space you traverse. Memories etched in the roughness of the stones, hopes glimmering in the gaps where sunlight spills through, the pulse of your breath tracing lines of possibility in the air. You let your body move in that circle without a destination, allowing the rhythm of your steps to become a mantra. In the unmade spaces, I become whole. You step out of the ruin and notice a low stone bench just beyond the wall. You sit and take off your jacket, folding it over your lap like a blanket. You tuck your notebook beside you, now feeling its presence as a companion rather than an obligatory ledger. You stretch your arms wide and let the morning's light wash over your face, the hush of the unmade spaces settling behind your eyes. You close your eyes and whisper, "I ask this day only to be guided by inquiry, by surprise, by the pulse of what has not yet been written." You place your hands in your lap and let your breathing find its own unhurried cadence. You give yourself permission to linger in the unknown, in parking lots not yet parked, in conversations not yet had, in ideas not yet formed. You feel the soft edge of anticipation settle in your gut, not the anxious kind that tightens your chest, but the kind that hums at the perimeter of your senses, like a seed waiting for rain. You rise from the stone bench and begin walking back toward the edge of the park, each step carrying you from the timeless hush into the awakened bustle of midday. You notice how the shadows are shifting as the sun eases into its arc, each shift an unmade pattern of light and dark, each step a new invitation to inhabit the unmade spaces. You carry the hush inside you like a secret flame that will not be extinguished by the day's heat. As you exit the park, you feel the quiet hum of the city rise to meet you, honking horns, snippets of conversation, distant music drifting from open windows. You pause at the gate and place a palm on its wrought iron frame, feeling the pulse of energy that thrums beneath the surface, like the promise of a story waiting for its author. You whisper, "I bring my unmade spaces into this noise and let my questions shape the day." You step onto the sidewalk and turn left, toward the part of town where you often race past without a second glance. You notice a small, weathered workshop selling handmade instruments whose windows are darkened by morning shadows. The wooden door, cool under your fingertips, has a latch you have never lifted. You breathe and tell yourself, "This is an unmade space for me to explore." You turn the latch and push open the door, stepping into a dim interior filled with the scent of varnish and sawdust. Old violins hang on a back wall like sleeping birds, and the workbench in the center of the room has half-carved wood scraps scattered across its surface. A single stool beckons you to sit. You take a seat and let the silence of the workshop envelope you. You see a lute's body incomplete, its curves half-formed, waiting for strings to breathe melody into its calloused wood. You sense that this instrument resides in an unmade space, neither silent nor sung, neither absent nor fully present. You reach out and run a finger along its smooth edge, feeling the warmth of the wood under your skin. You notice that in the collar of the lute, a small scrap of vine has grown into a spiral pattern, a reminder that life persists even in places we assume are static. You lean in and whisper, "Teach me how to be both work and pause, both absence and potential." You close your eyes and allow the hush of the workshop and the half-carved instrument to settle into your being. You feel the rough grain of the workbench through the stool's worn cushion. You sense the faint echo of hammering and sawing from earlier in the morning. You breathe and whisper, "I am both sheet and note, both breath and silence." You open your eyes and trace the outline of the unfinished lute, each curve and groove a possibility not yet realized, each shadow a promise of melody yet to be heard. You rise and step out of the workshop, letting the door close quietly behind you. You stand on the threshold and feel the shift in nothingness as the hush inside the room fades into the street's hum. You carry with you the sense of the workshop's unmade spaces, the half-constructed notes, the unstrung melodies, the imperative that something must be left undone in order to become. You walk on, each footfall a metronome marking the beat of questions you have carried since dawn. The next destination appears unplanned, a small, nondescript bookstore whose door stands ajar. You cannot say why you pass it 4 times on your way, but each time you sense that you have not yet earned the visit. On the 5th pass, you step in and find a lone attendant perched behind a counter, leafing through an old journal whose pages are yellowed with age. The shop smells of moss and leather, and the hush feels heavier than in the workshop, as though each book encases a lifetime of unmade stories. You wander the narrow aisles, fingers brushing the spines, feeling the embossed titles, the frayed edges, the padded wood of metal clasps. You notice a slim volume titled Unfinished Dialogues, Conversations with the Unknown. You pull it from the shelf and open it to a random page. We often fear that if a story remains unended, we will be lost to it, but in truth, the unended invites us to co-create what remains unwritten. You feel the words echoing in your chest, an affirmation of your own morning's vow to dwell in unmade spaces. You tuck the book beneath your arm and pay the attendant, who nods at you with a knowing glance, as though they recognize fellow travelers on the path of unmade possibility. You leave the bookstore and collapse onto a bench across the street, opening the volume to read more. You immerse yourself in its pages, each paragraph a lantern in the hush, illuminating the shape of unmade thoughts. You let the words speak to the fissures in your own life, the places you left undone, the questions you never dared whisper, the possibilities you assumed were lost. You write a phrase in your mind, "I am the co-author of my unfolding." You close the book gently and place it onto the bench beside you, feeling its quiet weight as a companion to your own untold narratives. You sit for a moment in silence, feeling the world swirl around you, cars drifting by, footfalls clattering on pavement, a distant radio's muted melody. You let that swirl meld with the hush you carry within, watching how chaos can coexist with calm when you choose to cultivate the unmade spaces in both. You rise from the bench and begin walking toward home, letting the lines from the book loop through your mind like refrains of a song you have yet to learn. As you cross another intersection, you pause for the light and notice a homeless man seated beside a trash can, cradling a battered guitar in his lap. You sense that his instrument, too, occupies an unmade space. A carved body missing strings, a neck worn smooth by countless strums, a hollow chamber echoing with the songs of his life yet to be sung. You catch his gaze as the light changes, and for a moment you share the hush of unmade spaces. He nods as though he recognizes your own morning's pathway and the quiet flame you carry from dawn to dusk. You step past him when the light flickers green, but you carry his silent nod with you like an amulet. You realize that everyone, whether they own a home or wander the streets, carries unmade spaces within themselves. Wounds that haven't healed, dreams that haven't yet found life, questions that ache for answers. You breathe in this shared hush as you move, knowing that the day's narrative is not solely yours to shape, but co-shaped with those who inhabit the unmade spaces alongside you. You finally arrive at your doorstep as the sun reaches its zenith, casting the world in stark clarity. You stand before the door and feel the tension of the day's demands press at your shoulders once more, ready to resume its usual suffocation. But this time, you carry the hush of every unmade space you have wandered through, each garden bud, each blank page, each half-tuned instrument, folded into your being like a secret note. You breathe in that hush and whisper, "I will bring what I have collected to the making of my life." You step inside, closing the door gently and letting the hush settle into the walls of your home. The afternoon unfolds with tasks you cannot avoid, emails to send, bills to pay, phone calls to make, but you let each action be guided by the questions that dwell in your unmade spaces. How can I honor my own becoming in this moment? What new possibility might arise from the hush that lives beneath the noise? How do I let my breath shape my choices rather than problems dictate them? You watch how these inquiries shift your engagement with the mundane. You do not multitask in a frantic scramble, but move more deliberately, reading each email with intention, writing each response with care, ending each call with a brief pause to collect your breath. As the day bleeds into evening, you find yourself on your couch, the glow of the setting sun filtering through half-closed blinds. You feel an ache behind your eyes that could be fatigue, but you sense also the softness of having met your unmade spaces. You reach for your notebook once more and write a single phrase at the top of a new page. "Tonight, I dwell in the hush." You let the words stand alone, savoring their resonance as though each letter were a drop of dusk settling on your tongue. You rise and move to your kitchen, where a pot of water simmers on the stove. You drop tea leaves, a fragrant blend you seldom brew, into a mug, letting the steam swirl upward like the silent promises of the day's lessons. You place the mug beside your notebook and sit at the table. You hold the mug with both hands, feeling the warmth seep through porcelain and into your palms. You close your eyes and let the tea's aroma fill your senses, a final invocation of calm before the night fully descends. You open your notebook and write a brief reflection. Today, I walked into many unmade spaces, a blank page, an overgrown garden, a forgotten workshop, a circle of ancient stones, the hush between heartbeats. Each space invited me to see what I carry beneath the surface of my urgency. I learned that everything I fear leaving undone is an invitation to creativity, that every question I do not answer is a doorway into deeper wisdom, that my life's shape is not fixed by tasks but woven by the hush I choose to honor. In touching these spaces, I discovered that I need not fill every void to be whole. I only need to remain present to the breath that moves me through each moment. You close your eyes and rest your head on the table, feeling the quiet hum of your own pulse echo across the pages you have written. The world outside dims into a tapestry of twilight, streetlights flicker on, cars hum by in the distance, the hush of night settles like a blanket. You sense that tomorrow's sun will rise as it always has, demanding your attention again. But tonight, In this unmade space between day and night, you will simply breathe and let the hush you carried through the day cradle you into sleep. You stand and walk to your bedroom, the hush of the unmade spaces following like a silent companion in your footsteps. You slip under the covers and let the darkness fold around you. You feel the threads of possibility weaving through your dreams, fields of daisies whispering questions, half-tuned violins calling for your hands, blank pages waiting for your pen. You let your breath settle into a steady pattern. Inhale, exhale, guided by the pulse of the day's unmade spaces. As you drift towards sleep, you murmur, "May I live tomorrow with the hush I learned to hold today." You feel the hush deepen, wrapping you like a soft garment of shadows and stars. You release your final waking thought into the stillness. I am the keeper of my unmade spaces. May they shape me rather than I shape them. And with that, you surrender to the living hush, carried by the gentle currents of unmade possibility into the soft expanse of dreams.